What is up, fam? Thank you so much for joining us tonight on a special edition of So Real Sports Talk. The reason why it's special is because we got the man, the myth, the legend, my brother from another mother, Nick Newman. Oh, and by the way, my name is Sunil. But Niner Nick is here straight off. Dude, I feel like you haven't been streaming in quite a bit, so I feel
It's been a
honored.
minute.
I feel honored that you back on the streams with your boy. So Niner Nick Newman, talk to us, man. What's been going on in your life? How's the radio stuff going? How's the podcast going? Talk to me, my man.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And I love coming on your channel because I always get these extraordinary and extravagant introductions. Thank you for that, Sunil. But yeah, you nailed it. It's been a while, man. It's been a while. Not too many people know this about me, but because my Twitter following, they see the rants, they see the podcast. They don't know the true Niner Nick and what I do day by day. So I work with kids. I run an after-school program, YMCA of San Francisco. I'm a PE teacher, part-time PE teacher too. So my time is just consumed Monday through Friday where I'm working 10, 11-hour days with kids nonstop.
Wow.
And, in the beginning of the school year, it was cool. I had the energy for it. I was recording my podcast weekly. And then towards the end of the season, things were just getting so busy. So it has been a while since I've been on the stream and recording my own pods. But I'm excited for this opportunity. You are my first stream that I've done in a month or two. So it definitely has been a while. But I'm excited to talk about 49ers football with you tonight and just kind of use this as an opportunity to get right back into it and hit the ground running for my own podcast and getting back on other streams and everything.
I love it, man.
Good. Life's good. Life's good. I can't.
Dude, the tan's coming in. Like you got a little bit, dude.
I'm out. I have like the most uneven tan lines right now just from being out. Like I have a mask tan from being outside with the kids with my mask on, sock tan. It's rough. It's rough.
Hey. You still look pretty though, Nick, in my book.
Right. I appreciate you.
And I gotta say, before we get into the grit of things, because there's a lot to talk about, bro, your rants this season, like so epic, man. Like the just like the passion, like I feel like you encompass what it is to be a 49er fan. And it's just the rants that you put together after the wins, after the losses, just like how you went at whoever you wanted to go at or cheer for whomever you wanted to cheer. I just gotta say, man, bravo to you, my man.
I appreciate it. And it was cool to kind of have that develop over the course of the season, because of course, reflecting on this past year, the 49ers opened up against the Lions, opened up against the Eagles, won their first two games. And then here came the Sunday night football game against the Packers. I'm angry on how it ended. I thought Kyle Shanahan could have done a better job. Everybody's upset with Jimmy Garoppolo, understandably so. And I just always felt like Garoppolo has been a scapegoat to an extent. Obviously, his true colors have shown over the course of the season, and we saw why, especially in the NFC Championship game, why they drafted Trey Lance to eventually take him over. But yeah, it was definitely cool to see the rants pick up as much steam as they did over the course of the year, and some reach as many as like 75,000 views. Yeah. Really unexpected on my end, because here I am just using it as a platform to vent, get my feelings out in a way, to express myself to a mass audience. And I never expected to kind of have the response and the interest and the engagement that all of that led to.
Yeah, man. It was well worth it. It was entertainment, to say the least. And James Coombs wants to personally welcome back Nick to Pod Life. And James,
I appreciate that, James.
James, thanks so much for tuning into the show as usual, my man. You definitely one of my faves to have up here. So, Nick, now that we got all the pleasantries out of the way, let's get into talking some shop, my man. Let's go. Article just came out. Adam Schefter going on interviews talking about, hey, this trade for Jimmy Garoppolo isn't a lock. There is now, some could say, hey, maybe that means that the 49ers may just cut him, may not only just trade him, but some people are saying that, hey, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo could come back. Flip that to, some of the greats of the 49ers, guys like Joe Montana, Steve Young, talking about, hey, Trey might not be ready. Maybe, we need to get a quarterback, keep Jimmy, or get a quarterback in here that could start because Trey might not be ready. And then you got just the 49ers linked to like every single quarterback that's available or not available, right? Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, who we thought retired. And Nick, you and I met last offseason, and we pretty much, I felt like we were debating the same thing, like who's going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers. And I thought we finally, got over it with Jimmy starting for a whole year. And now he's going to like go off to his next venture, and Trey's going to be the guy. But what do you make of all of these rumors coming back up? And are people not, is there really some smoke behind Trey not being ready? Is there really some smoke behind that the 49ers might be looking for another veteran to come in and do another bridge before Trey actually gets to start?
There's a lot to dissect there. And what I want to start with is I feel like there's a misconception among the fan base. And this is how I personally perceive it. When you look at the media and when they say Trey Lance is not ready, I don't think that they're saying that in the sense of he can't walk onto the field and play as a top NFL caliber quarterback, or, even just what I think they're going with that is the 49ers are like no other team in the league where they finished in the Final Four. They finished in the Final Four. This is a team ready to win now. And when you hear people say Trey Lance isn't ready, I think they're talking more about Trey Lance may not be ready to take the 49ers to the Super Bowl right now, because outside of him, at least this past year, who knows what's going to happen with the roster turnover during free agency, during the draft. Who knows what the construct of the roster is going to look like next year. But when you look at this team, and if you were to take this same exact roster, carry it over to next season, it's a Super Bowl championship caliber roster. And I feel like that's what the media folk are kind of talking about. Trey Lance, is he ready to lead a team to the Super Bowl right now? I think he'd be just fine as far as, doing the things that Jimmy Garoppolo could do. Although I do think a lot of what Garoppolo brought to the table, the good things Garoppolo brought to the table, fly under the radar a little bit and are kind of underappreciated and undervalued within the fan base. But I think that's where the media goes with it. They see the 49ers roster, they see the success they had this past season, and they think to themselves, is Trey Lance ready to get this team right to where Garoppolo took them 2 out of the last 3 years, So I think that's where their mind is from, their thought process is at, opposed to Trey Lance simply is not ready, because I do think he's an NFL caliber starting quarterback as soon as next season. And now looking at these other rumors, the Tom Brady, the Aaron Rodgers, oh man, I'm sick of it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go there. I'm more than happy to discuss it with you, but where I'm at, the trades that are going to happen and we'll talk about it, but I'm not talking about the hypotheticals and what could happen. I'm exhausted. Exhausted doing all that.
Right.
But I will say I would put Trey Lance in the backseat one more year to bring in Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, especially after what you saw last year with the Rams plugging in Matt Stafford, putting them over the top and winning the Super Bowl. That's too good to pass up, in my opinion. So I would sideline Trey Lance one more year. If Rodgers or Brady became a 49er, I'd have no problem with that. But I'm not going to discuss it because this is Trey's football team as far as I'm concerned moving forward until it's not.
Man, oh man. So 49ers throwbacks, sup, Nick? He sucked.
What's up, 49ers throwback? Love that Abby, by the way.
James Coombe Schefter also said the pick at number 3 after the trade was for Mac Jones. So, I mean, I feel like obviously Shefty's trying to break news, but for the most part, he gets it right. Amin, my man, if the Niners didn't want Brady in 2020, why would they want him now? Good point. I mean, Trey should have played this past season. He may have Ben Roethlisberger's first 2 years with this roster. Jimmy's not the QB to win a Super Bowl with. So, Nick, here's the thing, my man. So one thing I've learned about this Shanahan and Lynch regime is with the media, they're extremely calculated, right? We just saw them let last season go when they made the trade to go up, that they just let everybody run with the Mac Jones thing, right? Even though
sure did.
It ended up coming up that, they wanted Trey Lance and, they were enamored with Trey Lance after they saw him and so on and so forth. My whole thing is I understand allowing all of this stuff because, look, this isn't the first time that they flirted with a bunch of different quarterbacks openly. Now, I'm not saying any of these rumors have come from the 49ers.
Of course.
But you would think that you would think that when you have a young guy like Trey that's about to make the biggest leap ever in his football career, from going from, from like never playing in the NFL to like being every now and then started a couple games, and now going to be the full-time starter. Don't you think they would shut this down? To like, if they're really behind Trey, don't you think they'd go to a guy like Montana and be like, yo, man, cool it, bro. Hey, Steve, like, I know you guys are up here in the media, but like, yo, this is the faithful, man. Like, what are we doing right now? This is our guy. And where is the confidence behind, or where is the articles from Shanahan or Lynch saying like, yo, this is just off-season talk. Trey is our guy. All this kind of stuff that they used to do even for Jimmy, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm more like wondering, because it's like, and the reason why I say it, Nick, it's not just these guys that are outside of the circle are saying these types of things. Joe Montana is saying he's talking to players on the team that are saying this. And that's where things are a little bit different, because what do you think a guy like Trey is thinking when the greatest quarterback in his franchise's history is saying he's talking to players that think that he's not the guy?
Yeah. No, that's tough. That's tough. Let me touch on first why I don't think Shanahan or Lynch are coming out and getting in front of this thing and saying, Trey is our quarterback, we're moving forward this way. There's just so much up in the air right now, and it limits, like, you could lose a lot of trust. And I do firmly believe that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, mostly Kyle Shanahan, wants to give Trey Lance the keys to the franchise. And by making comments like that and coming out, first of all, this stuff happens so often, they're not going to be able to have a press conference every time a rumor comes out and say,
right,
yeah, we heard about the Brady comment or the rumors, and we've heard Schefter say this and that, and it's not true. I just don't think it's a smart thing to do, because that trust that you're trying to build with Trey Lance, if you're making those comments and then an opportunity presents itself where maybe you can get Aaron Rodgers for a reasonable price, or Tom Brady wants to come over for a reasonable price. And then what do? You don't do it because you told the fan base, you told Trey Lance he was going to take over, even though you're more of a Super Bowl contender next year with either of those two guys. So I don't think it's necessary to get in front of it and to shut everything down, to shoot it down and just name Trey Lance a starter, because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I'm sure they're concerned, Jimmy Garoppolo still on the roster. It looks crystal clear that he's on his way out, but there's just too much uncertainty to come out and say, we're backing Trey Lance, we're not going after Aaron Rodgers, we are not going after Tom Brady. And if they were to say that, I'd be like, why would you make those comments to begin with? Because you are a better football team next year if either of those two guys become a realistic possibility to join your football club.
That makes a lot of sense. And, one thing that Jimmy Garoppolo always said about Kyle Shanahan and Lynch was they were always very transparent with him. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes conversations and that they're letting Trey in on and saying, hey, I know this stuff is going on, but this is why we're allowing these narratives to be spun. This is what we're thinking about. And you're our guy. And I'm sure they're communicating. And as long as they're good behind the scenes, what does it matter that what the public thinks, right?
So let me tell you this. This is the quarterback conversation I want to be having. Okay. Are the 49ers going to sign Tyrod Taylor? Are they going to sign Marcus Mariota? Are they going to sign Mitch Trubisky, Cam Newton? That's a fun conversation. That's not so exhausting, because we're not doing who's the starting quarterback next year, And I think there's a lot of truth behind a discussion like that, because I do think the 49ers should upgrade QB2 next year. If Trey Lance propels into that starting role, I do not want Nate Sudfeld being the number 2 quarterback on the football team. I find so much value in having a second quarterback that can keep your season alive for a 3-4 game stretch if need be. Guys like Tyrod Taylor, Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, they have that ability. And I don't know if I just have PTSD from Jimmy Garoppolo and being so accustomed to the quarterback position, missing a few games year after year, where maybe I overvalue having a second quarterback that can kind of lead your team, because it's not a problem with these other high-end quarterbacks that you see in the NFL. Right. Maybe it's just my own trauma coming out as a 49er fan. But I would love to see someone like Tyrod Taylor or Mitch Trubisky come in and not necessarily push for the starting job, because that would just be awful if there was a quarterback competition between Mitch Trubisky and Trey Lance or something like that. But I love the security of having a guy who can help keep your playoff hopes alive, just like Nick Foles in 2018, 2000, whatever year it was, when Carson Wentz went down. And here comes Nick Foles, just taking it game by game, keeping the Eagles alive. So I do see a lot of value there.
Yeah, man. And also for a young quarterback, you want to have a seasoned vet back there to kind of help him with the X's and O's and be that mentorship type role as well. We got a lot of comments coming in. Raphael 562 Niners.
Do it. Like and subscribe, baby.
I appreciate that, man. And 562, man, you over at OC area. I like it, man. I like it. So there was a question that came in, and usually we don't switch topics with questions this early, but I thought it was kind of cool. I know I didn't put it out there, but 49ers throwback. Sunil asked Nick if he thinks Sean McVay is ahead of Kyle Shanahan's career as far as winning or the better head coach, since Sean McVay won a ring. Do you think that puts more pressure on him now? Now, Nick, I know you're like me. We are Shanna Stans. So I don't know if your Shanna Stanness will allow you to speak on this, but
I can speak on it for sure.
All right, let's go.
I definitely will. And I'm very reluctant to place myself in the Shanna Stan category, just because I do feel like he deserves a lot more criticism from time to time than he gets. But the way that I see it, just look at the differences in their careers and the situations that they entered. Sean McVay had a very stacked team, inherited a very stacked team, whereas the 49ers roster, when they both took over in 2017, McVay took over 2017, Shanahan took over 2017, they had a completely gut the 49ers roster. Just look at the 2016 team. Jeremy Curley was the leading wide receiver. You had all these random players on the team that there just wasn't much there. So I don't think the comparison as far as win percentage goes between Shanahan and McVay is very fair, just because McVay got a head start, and, Shanahan is starting to close the gap a little bit. But the reality is the Rams haven't had a losing season under McVay. They've only missed the playoffs 1 year, 2019, when the 49ers went on their run. And under the new playoff format, they would have made the playoffs that year. They would have been the 7th seed. So then it comes down to the question of McVay has the ring, Shanahan does not. And that does mean something, but also Shanahan and Lynch, the way that they've played their hand, they've been very by the book, I guess you can say, very cautious and mindful with the moves they've made, whereas Les Snead and Sean McVay, they've always been go-getters. Let's make our team better now. Let's go get this done now. And I've always admired that about Les Snead and Sean McVay. And I loved the shirt that Les Snead wore at the parade. I don't know if you saw it, Sunil, but it said, I'm not going to swear on your show, don't worry, but it said F them. It said F them picks. Because he's like, screw the draft picks. And I love acquiring proven talent. Everybody gets their head wrapped around the salary cap. Oh, but the 49ers cap hit in 2024 is going to be $15 million. I don't give a about the 49ers cap hit in 2 years. Just like, do you think the Rams care what their cap hit's going to be like next year, the year after, as they're out on floats celebrating, taking shots of 1942, their small fan base that was at the parade getting all crazy? I want to win now. And McVay and Les Snead made the move to get Matthew Stafford, which allowed them to win right now. They got OBJ. They got Von Miller. They put together like a Miami Heat super team over the course of the season. Mm-hmm. And the 49ers instead put their eggs in the Trey Lance basket in the future. And, my biggest L last offseason, and I'm more than happy to explain this to everybody, I did not think Matthew Stafford was a big enough upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo to give up what the Rams gave up. And that was a huge L. Huge L. Mm-hmm. I mean, that take could not be any further from the truth, because look where Stafford is right now. Look where Garoppolo is at. Look how the NFC Championship went down. So, yeah, that's just my take. Let's get aggressive here, and you're going to have a lot more cap space cleared up with Trey Lance taking over on that rookie contract. Go get big-time players. Get a J.C. Jackson. Go do something crazy to get yourself back to where you were this past season, except take it a step further, get to the Super Bowl, then win it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, you got to say, as far as potential, maybe there's still an argument to be had. But as far as success, Sean McVay has just had more of it than Kyle Shanahan. And obviously there's nuance to it, and you laid it out pretty well as far as, the teams that they may have inherited. But as far as maximizing what they've had, Kyle Shanahan has had the opportunity with this roster to win a Super Bowl. And I think his lack of decisiveness at the quarterback position has played a role in why the 49ers
sure.
haven't won a Super Bowl yet. You know, you're talking about you could have had Tom Brady. You're talking about you could have easily, when Jimmy Garoppolo has gotten injured so many times, gone in and went harder after a quality backup player, or drafted, you know, a younger guy earlier in his tenure. Those are the type of things that I don't think McVay allowed to happen. He always made sure that the reason why he wasn't losing wasn't because of injuries or because they didn't have enough talent on the field. And Shanahan just hasn't been able to have that same thing to say, because the reason why the 49ers haven't been competitive each season, although they have been ravaged by injuries, is because they didn't have enough talent at quarterback enough times. And I think that's where the biggest difference between McVay and Kyle Shanahan, as far as why they once had more success than the other, is the decisiveness at that quarterback position.
Totally.
Cool. Coombs jumps in. If the 49ers shut down rumors or back Lance 100% before Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded, they lose leverage, business games. Absolutely, man.
Good call.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, let's move on. Talking about people that are getting thrown under the bus. Now, this one isn't as, I think, this one's a little more cerebral. You know, I don't know if you've been paying attention, Nick, but everybody's starting to talk about this Christian Watson guy out of NDSU. People are saying that that's just the pick we need to go after. Bring Trey Lance and Christian together. They're going to be the next Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And that Christian is going to be upgrading everything for the receivers. Debo and Christian are the new, the new duo, yada, 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 yada. But wait, we already got that guy on the roster. His name is Brandon Ayuk. But it seems like he's like an afterthought for a lot of the fan base, Nick. And I know you're pretty tied into, with your podcast and just being out in the Bay and just, with what the fan base is thinking. Are people giving up on Brandon Ayuk? What do you think?
No. Hell no. Absolutely not. No way. No way anybody around here is giving up on Brandon Ayuk. And you've seen the amount of growth that he shown over the course of the season. And I would argue the reason why people gave up on him in the first place, a lot people I don't think actually ever gave up on him in the first place, but just the reason why he was in the doghouse was because whatever was going on behind closed doors with Kyle Shanahan, that clearly got cleared up. Ayuk is on record saying they had a conversation about it and he was able to move forward. And he did what Dante Pettis couldn't do. He took the constructive feedback. He took the hard coaching. He took getting chewed out and he turned it in to making the most out of the opportunity. And how could you look at how Ayuk finished the season and the big plays that he made, and then look, this is a guy that we're going to give up on? The future is so bright with Brandon Ayuk, and I do think that it's really interesting that people want to bring Trey Lance back with his teammate, the wide receiver from NDSU, and I don't see it. Juwan Jennings came on so strong towards the end of last year. The market that I think the 49ers should be in at wide receiver is maybe look into Isaiah McKenzie, who is an unrestricted free agent, a guy that you can use similarly to Deebo Samuel, but maybe limit some of his touches out of the backfield. And there's a list of wide receivers, depth guys that I think they should look at in free agency, but you can't be spending your second round draft pick, which is really your first draft pick this year, on a wide receiver. Although I get the argument of drafting the best player available, but look how many investments the 49ers have made over the years at wide receiver. It's time to continue to invest in the trenches and, build that bully, help out the ground game, help out Trey Lance, help out the defensive line. So if they can't land a big cornerback, that job on the back end of the defense is still relatively easier in comparison if you weren't to have a pass rush. I just don't see it.
I'm with you. And Fernando Orellana, I hope I pronounced that, man. Fernando Orellana. Brandon Ayuk said, throw me the deep ball. Jimmy couldn't. But who can? Trey Lance. And I think that's the biggest key. So I watched a lot of what Jack Hammer puts out as far as his film study. And one thing when it comes to the route running, Brandon Ayuk is a really great route runner. And a lot of the times he's creating separation and he's open most of the time versus like less of the time, I would say. The problem
Definitely,
that makes most of the time, less of the time, right?
Yeah.
But he's always the deep route. So you got to have a quarterback that's comfortable or confident enough to be able to throw that deep ball. And just like Fernando said, Jimmy wasn't confident to do that. There's a stat that I was looking at that I had put up on Twitter. I just looked at all the times that Brandon Ayuk had been targeted 5 or more times. And the 49ers were like 7-1 in those games. Like, he makes this offense so much better. The problem is he just doesn't get enough run. So for people to like start thinking that there may be in the draft somebody that can upgrade Brandon Ayuk, Nick, I'm crazy enough to think that Brandon Ayuk is the best receiver out of that draft, even more than Jefferson and Lamb. And I think that he has all of the potential to be able to do that. And just give him 1 year with Trey Lance, actually giving him that opportunity to get that deep ball. We've already seen him do so many acrobatic things in his rookie season where he had like the play of the year jumping over that Eagle defender and scoring a touchdown. We've seen him make one-handed Spider-Man-like catches this season. And, and this is all with a quarterback that we all think is limited with the deep ball. So give him an opportunity with the guy who isn't scared to throw the deep ball, that has a strong enough arm to get him the ball, on time and, in areas where he could make a play. And I just think that we're going to have like one of the best receiving cores. Not to mention the fact that we have, like you just said, Juwan Jennings, plus a guy named George Kittle, who's not too bad at catching the ball. And with Anthony Lynn as the new offensive coach, with Kyle Shanahan, these running backs are going to get the ball out of the backfield a lot more as well. So I just think there's not enough targets in our offense to even waste a draft pick on another high-end, wide receiver. And I just don't think Christian's the guy anyways.
Definitely. And there's a lot of truth behind what you're talking about as far as skill level goes. And I do believe that if you put a guy like Brandon Ayuk in a pass-first offense like Dallas, where CeeDee Lamb's at, like in Minnesota, where Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are at, you would see very similar production. And I'm pretty sure over the last 9 games of the season, Brandon Ayuk had better numbers than CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb kind of started slowing down a little bit, and Ayuk started picking it up. And look who had the better game in the NFC wild card round.
Right.
Brandon Ayuk, because CeeDee Lamb was nowhere to be found for whatever reason, which is very inexcusable on Dallas's end because he's a hell of a talent in his own right.
Right. I agree with you, man. And I just Brandon Ayuk is like one of my favorite players on the team. I really think that he's getting the short end of the stick, and not to anything that he's doing everything that I feel like is in his control. And I just think give Trey an opportunity, or give him an opportunity with any quarterback. Can you imagine if Aaron Rodgers had Brandon Ayuk on the outside for those deep balls and stuff like that? Like, I want it to be Trey, but just somebody that could get him the ball. And I think we're talking a whole different story.
I think Trey can be that guy for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's move to the other side of the ball. So one thing last offseason, Nick, was the biggest, I guess, question mark. What had everybody up in a tizzy? You like that word? Tizzy?
I love the tizzy. I'm a big tizzy guy.
So the fan base was really worried about the 49ers secondary. And for the most part, they weren't as big of a weakness as many people may have thought.
Definitely.
Even though they like patchworked it together with Verrett going down, in week 1. Now, obviously, a lot of that had to do with the way that they adjusted with the linebackers and the safeties, and then what the defensive line was able to do. But near the end of the season, they started situating that Eman Mosley and Ambry Thomas were those 2 outside corners, and they started to play pretty well together. So now moving into this next season, Nick, I know you brought up some guys like J.C. Jackson. Some people are talking about Stephon Gilmore. There are going to be some guys that are leaving, like K'Wan Williams, I think, is probably going to walk, or the 49ers are going to let him walk. But let's just stick to the corners before we move on to the safeties. But just with the corners, do you think the 49ers have found their 2 outside corners, or are you looking to maybe make a splash into these other corners that might be on the market?
Potentially have found their starting two outside corners, yes. Would I like to see them strive for more and find a cornerback who could potentially be a lockdown corner? A guy like, oh my goodness, where am I going? Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore's had a very decorated career. He was NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's very, very good, but I just think to when you bring these veteran corners in, like a guy that I always go back to when you have that strong front seven, that strong pass rush, Carlos Rogers, when he came over to the 49ers in 2011, he was a guy that had no interceptions, if I remember correctly, throughout his entire 4 or 5 year career with the Redskins. Then here comes the pass rush. Here you plug him in, he's getting 7 interceptions a year. He's making Pro Bowls. So I always like the idea of bringing in more, especially at the cornerback position. And we've seen guys like Ambry Thomas before that have gotten dusted, have gotten burnt, and then made a couple plays, and you're thinking to yourselves, okay, there's the growth. Akello Weatherspoon comes to mind, 3rd round draft pick, just like Ambry Thomas. He spent a lot of his career. There was a lot of times where he was getting burnt penalties, just making you want to pull your hair out watching him play defense. Then you see a couple stretches of good football, but is the consistency there? I'm not ready to say that Ambry Thomas is going to be a consistent corner next year. I don't know how anybody could say that. He had a very strong end of the season, and it's a lot to feel good about, but it's not enough for me to say I'm going into the 2022 season with Emmanuel Mosley and Ambry Thomas. And Mosley in his own right, he misses a couple football games a year over the last several years too. So I'm not ready to stop there. The 49ers have not made big investments. This regime has not made big investments at the cornerback position for whatever reason. Jason Verrett was a what's the word I'm looking for? When they took a
Band-Aid.
flyer on Jason Verrett. It was a Band-Aid. Let's see if he can revert back to his very when he was a very good cornerback. Let's see if we can get that kind of play out of him. And they did, but then he got hurt. So I would like to see them make a splashy move at cornerback. Do I think it's completely necessary? No. I would get the logic behind it. If they weren't to do that, I would just personally like to see it. And the logic behind not doing it is you just look at their defense over the last couple of years. They've had a top pass defense pretty much every single year since 2018. And that was the second year of the regime. They've been top 5, top 10 in passing yards allowed every single year, year after year. So I get it. I get not making that splashy move in that sense, But when you see a guy in these game-changing corners out there that can help you get the football back and generate turnovers, you got to strongly look into that. So I'm not convinced that the 49ers have found their 2 outside starting cornerbacks, but there's definitely a lot of potential between them both.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot higher on Ambry Thomas than most. I think he's a stud, and I think it makes a lot of sense why he started playing better at the second half of the season. He's a 3-year starter with Michigan, and he would have been a 4-year starter, but he opted out of that COVID year. And so he didn't play a full year of football and then came into the NFL. That's why I think he dropped to the 3rd round where the 49ers were able to get him. And it takes some time. I mean, we saw it even with Trey, not playing football for a full year and then obviously jumping up to the pace of what the NFL is, especially at that cornerback position. I would say outside of the quarterback position, maybe cornerback is the most difficult position because you're reacting to the best athletes on the field consistently. So it probably took him some time to learn, how to play at that speed. But I think he's going to be a stud. And James Coombs, I know you brought up Witherspoon. Witherspoon would pout after getting burnt. Ambry gets back to the line, different mentalities. He's saying Ambry ain't the same. There's different levels to getting burnt, baby.
Through that way, we drew the comparison that Brandon Ayuk is not Dante Pettis. He can take the tough stuff coming his way. So maybe Ambry Thomas is not Akello Witherspoon nor Dante Pettis. He has that Brandon Ayuk dog mentality where let's just get it. Let's just move on. Let's get better from this. And I see that. It was great to see him close out that Week 18 game with a pick. I was very happy for him after all the shit I gave him earlier.
And I mean, I think there's something to be said about not staying pat and just like, you always want to get as many impact players on the team as well. And I think that, Stephon Gilmore is somebody who I was kind of picketing for, to be honest, last season. I was talking about, maybe you could get him in a trade if you trade Jimmy to New England get a pick in Stephon Gilmore on the way back, because I thought obviously that would be a great option for the 49ers. The only thing is Stephon Gilmore is a little bit older now. He's going to be 32. And the 49ers haven't had the best luck with older cornerbacks and staying healthy. And, we've seen what an older cornerback kind of does as far as getting burnt in man and stuff like that. So maybe a guy if they could get a younger guy that's still out there, like J.C. Jackson, Kyle Fuller, maybe some of those guys. I mean, you got to talk about it at least, because if you can upgrade at any position, we already know people aren't going to stay healthy for the whole season. So if you can have a 3-man rotation of guys that you would feel comfortable being starters, I don't think that's a bad thing, and just let the best 2 win, let that competition and practice, definitely, push them to be the best. I'm not opposed to it, but I think we're in a much better situation this offseason when it's with the cornerbacks than we were last offseason, because I don't think our floor is as low as it was last offseason. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think they should go into the draft and get a stud. I could see them using their 2nd-round pick on a secondary guy, whether it be corner or safety, best player available at that position. So it is fun to see, and it's nice to have some corners with some swag. It's nice to have some corners that play that with that nasty streak and that intercepting the ball. We haven't had that with the 49ers in quite some time.
So this is something I floated out after the Niners lost to the Rams. I was at the airport and this came to mind. The Saints are $70 million roughly over the cap right now. So who knows what kind of roster moves they're going to have to make. And granted, they are used to being well over the cap this time year after year, and they do a good job maneuvering. But I would love to get someone like Marshawn Lattimore, who has been a Pro Bowler year after year. He has one of his cap hits coming up. I forget which year it is. It might even be this year. It's crazy high, but then it starts to go down and down year after year. He has a couple years left on his contract. And I think he just signed a contract extension this offseason. Or not this offseason, during the season. Yeah. Someone in my mentions, one of the Saints fans, was like, this isn't going to happen. He just signed his contract extension mid-season. And I forgot to fact check him on that, but I'm sure that's the case. But I would love if the Saints had to move off of someone that big because of their salary cap situation. I would float whatever compensation the 49ers get for Garoppolo to the Saints for Marshawn Lattimore, because he's been a Pro Bowler year after year. He makes plays. All corners get burnt from time to time, and he's no exception to that. But yeah, so I do think getting a cornerback that has the swag, has that mentality, that would be cool.
Yeah, James Coombs says, why Marshawn Lattimore? I heard Josh Norman's available. Yo, that was great. Hopefully, I just hope we don't have to pick up guys in street clothes in the middle of the season like we had to do the year before. Let's be a little smarter about that. So let's talk about another room. There's been rumors of guy like running backs like Christian McCaffrey being leaked to the 49ers. Obviously I think the 49ers have gotten their RB1 right with, Mitchell. He's definitely going to be coming in and having a major role. Now, Mostert, still one of the most explosive backs that the 49ers have had during this tenure. However, he is somebody who's oft injured. He's coming off a season-ending injury. I love seeing, I know you're a social media guy as well. He's just such a great teammate. He's always tweeting these guys. He's always on his Instagram posting great stuff about the team. He loves being a 49er. But should the 49ers bring back Mostert? And if your answer is yes, in what role should he be playing in?
I would absolutely, without hesitation, bring back Raheem Mostert. His explosiveness is so important to the 49ers offense, and the role that I would have him play is the exact role that he played in 2019 when he had his most success. He's not a bell cow. He's not, although he can do it, a guy that should be getting the ball in between the tackles and trying to lower his shoulder over defenders. And he has that mentality. I've seen him run. We've all seen him run that hard. Mm-hmm. But I would love to see him just being a 7-8 touch a game kind of guy, very similarly to how he was in 2019. And he was not getting the ball a whole lot the first 8-9 weeks of the 2019 season. Then he just kind of exploded and bursted onto the scene a little bit, and his workload really increased. And I think that he was able to last as long as he did all the way throughout the Super Bowl just by not playing that much in the beginning of the year. And I would love to see the 49ers bring back Raheem Mostert. I would love to see him get a $2-3 million contract. He's a team captain. I mean, that's important. You touched on the kind of person he is. He fits in extremely well to the locker room. He's a hard worker. I love his story. There's so much to love about Raheem Mostert, and I do think his explosiveness is such an important part to the 49ers offense. And I would bring him back, especially because I was pretty disappointed with Jeff Wilson, not necessarily as a player, but just because he wasn't getting the ball that much. And it was just a disappointing season from Jeff Wilson. You know, we found out after the draft that he was going to need knee surgery, or already had knee surgery. And then when he comes back, I was thinking, here's a guy that I thought, based on how he ended last season, the 2020 season, 2 seasons ago, I guess you could say, he was looking good. I thought he was going to be the 49ers starting running back before they went ahead and drafted Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell. And then you find out he gets hurt. And I thought he should have been running back number 1, or Raheem Mostert running back number 2. And to see him have a disappointing year like that, where he went like 4 weeks in a row after he had a very strong game against the Titans. I think that was the last time that we were without Elijah Mitchell. He did not touch the ball against the Texans. He did not touch the ball against the Rams. He did not touch the ball against the Cowboys, the Packers. He didn't touch the ball against the Rams in the championship game. Where did Jeff Wilson Jr. go? So that was very discouraging, because I've always been really, really high on him. I love the way he runs. And if he's in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, you know, they're running back, I love Raheem Mostert coming back, or Matt Breida.
Yeah. Breida's been out there and he's shown some flashes, but Buffalo. He's also somebody that can't stay healthy, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, it was quite strange. You brought up a really good point. Kyle Shanahan only really trusted Elijah Mitchell out of that running back room. Like, Trey Sermon didn't get much run. Even Hasty didn't get much run. You know, obviously you just brought up Jeff Wilson Jr. and obviously, Mostert was injured. But I could see them bringing him back just because it's the guy that it seems like Kyle trusts when he's out there. But he has to be managed better. And it's not like he was managed better anyways. He had 2 carries for 20 yards and then got injured. You know what I mean?
Explosive carries. Explosive carries to his credit.
So it wasn't like they were overusing him or whatever. But it's just kind of like, I don't know. With Anthony Lynn is obviously a guy who has overseen some really good running games. I just wonder if there's going to be a brand new overhaul of running backs that they bring in. Guys who maybe are a little bit more dual threats that could catch the ball out of the backfield. I think they know Elijah Mitchell is going to be RB1. I think they got to give Trey Sermon a chance to really, get some more play because you drafted him so high. Mostert would be nice, but, you just too many of these guys are just injury prone, Nick, as far in that running back room. We can't keep bringing guys off of the practice squad because we're giving positions to starters that just can't stay healthy.
Definitely. And
I just feel like Mostert, however much I love him and however much upside he has, man, you got to stay healthy, man. Like you can't keep, putting us in situations where we have to pull guys off of the couch to be able to come play. So I think the 49ers just have to make smarter decisions about who they're going to bring in, because if you're only going to keep maybe like 4 running backs and then obviously with Juice there, those 4 guys have to be consistently available. And 2 of them you already know is going to be Trey and Mitchell.
Elijah Mitchell.
So the other 2, they have to be guys that are going to be able to be available day in and day out. And Mostert's just not been able to prove that he's that guy.
I wouldn't get into a bidding war with a team like Miami, because I could definitely see McDaniel trying to get Mostert to Miami to kind of help propel his offense. I could definitely see that. And they've had a running back by committee approach for such a long time in Miami. Having guys like Myles Gaskins and Salvon Ahmed, who the 49ers signed as an undrafted free agent. So I'm sure they would love some stability there and maybe throw an extra $1 million or $2 million to pry Raheem Mostert away from an offer from the Niners. But I definitely, if it's reasonable, I would love to see him come back.
Right. Cool. Well, let us end on this one, Nick. So obviously the offseason is just barely starting. The draft is, free agency is a couple weeks away. The draft is, a couple months away, maybe less. But when you are, and obviously the season just ended a few weeks ago, but when you assess this team and you look at where this team is strong at, where this team's biggest weaknesses are, where do you think the 49ers, what position group do the 49ers need to focus on most this offseason and have to have the biggest upgrade?
That's a great question. And, it's one of those questions where it's tough to answer right in this very moment because you don't know what's going to happen with all the pending free agents.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen to the offensive line with Alex Mack, Laken Tomlinson. You don't know what's going to happen on the defensive line with Arden Key and Maurice Hurst. Arden Key especially because he was such a fantastic contributor down the stretch. And once that 49ers pass rush started to gel at the end of the year, oh, man, that just helped the defense so much. And you don't know what's going to happen with Jaquaski Tart and K'Wan Williams. And, I think about past years during free agency, there hasn't been a strong market for nickel cornerbacks, and there hasn't been a strong market for safety. So I wouldn't be shocked if Tart or K'Wan Williams come back, although I was shocked last offseason based on the contracts they were able to come back.
Right.
Like the vet minimum for both those guys are damn near close to it. So it's tough to answer right now. But I would say, given the fact that it's likely going to be Trey next year, and we've seen injuries at the quarterback position several times over the last couple of years, and Trey Lance is no exception to that. Granted, they were freak injuries. His finger hit a helmet against the Raiders. Kyle Shanahan was running him a little too hard against the Cardinals. Those injuries happen. I'm not saying Trey Lance is injury prone by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to protect your franchise guy. And because of the possibilities of the turnover among the offensive line, like Mike McGlinchey, what's going to happen with him? He's under contract. He's going to be making, over $10 million. Last year, they exercised his fifth-year option. You don't know what's going to happen with Daniel Brunskill, right guard. There's the most question marks are on the offensive line. I think that's the unit that they should prioritize stabilizing and potentially even upgrading.
Yep, James Coombs.
I'm right there with you, James Coombs.
So here's the thing, Nick, and this is because I agree with you as well. I think the O-line has to be the biggest focus because especially when you have a guy like Trey Lance back there, the offensive line skill set has to change a little bit because he holds the ball a little bit more than some of the previous quarterbacks that have been in the system, right? But here's my issue. The 49ers are terrible at drafting this position, at least this regime, right? They tend to either go after the wrong guy, i.e. pick an Aaron Banks over a Creed Humphreys.
Yep.
Or they completely whiff on picking a guy that's right in their grasp and go after another position, namely Kinlaw over Tristan Wirfs. You know what I mean? And so it just seems like when it comes to the draft, they're not necessarily identifying the right player and going after the right player. If you look at this year, the top three linemen that we have, who would you say are the top three linemen we had this year?
All on the left side, Trent Williams, Laken Tomlinson, Alex Mack.
Any of them drafted by the 49ers?
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
And if you talk about even the starters, Brunskill wasn't drafted by the 49ers either. The only person that was drafted was McGlinchey, who went down, and then Tom Compton. Tom Compton came in. He was drafted late round by the 49ers as well. So it's like this isn't a position that the 49ers have evaluated well and gone after well, at least when it comes to rookies and in the draft. It seems like this is a position where they do better when they go in free agency or
spend the money.
And trade and spend the money. So it's a little bit, I guess, perplexing to me why they're allowing Laken Tomlinson to even make it to free agency. I thought that this would be somebody that they'd do the same thing they did with Trent, where, hey, let's get you in a room, let's sign this contract before you even get a taste of what else is out there, because he's that imperative to the team. And I'm wondering if they already think that they have solutions in the house, house already to even like let him walk. I don't know, man. I just don't know how much confidence I have in this regime's evaluation of offensive linemen. What do you say to that?
I think that's very fair. I think that's a fair assessment. Here's me putting on my Les Snead fanboy hat. That will put the money in the investment. You have to do it. Trey Lance, you have to protect him. You have to protect him, and you can't make the argument of, well, he has the ability to extend plays. He can avoid the contact. You gotta protect your franchise guy. And I would love to see them bring back Laken Tomlinson. He has been such a phenomenal get. And I was listening to Matt Mayoko's podcast the other day, and they were talking about how he would be a great fit for the Bengals because the Bengals are going to have to protect Joe Burrow. We've seen what happens, Joe Burrow being the perfect example of what can go wrong when your offensive line can't hold up. How they won some of those games against the Titans, against the Chiefs, talking about the Bengals right now.
Right.
How did they win those games with the quarterback is getting hit and hit and hit? And, of course, you have Trent Williams. He's coming off the best PFF season of all time. Is that
right.
what it is?
Yeah.
I love Trent Williams. And then after that, you do have 4 question marks, which is scary. You have legit 4 question marks from left guard to right tackle. And that is not very comforting when you're having a rookie or a second-year quarterback who didn't get to play much his rookie year. That is far from ideal. So, again, stabilize that offensive line. Try to bring back Alex, or what's the situation with Alex Mack? Wasn't it like a contract that could be longer than 1 year if he decided not to retire? I don't know. I
think he's under contract. So if he does come back, he's under contract with the 49ers. It's just whether or not he's going to come back or retire.
And then Laken Tomlinson, Aaron Banks, he's a true unknown. Like, why was he in street clothes so frequently over the course of the entire year? Then you got a couple who was the other? Jalen Moore. Jalen Moore looked good at times. Then all of a sudden it was like, here comes Tom Compton playing right tackle. And Compton gave a couple good games at right tackle, but you can just see once the moment started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, he started to kind of shrink and shrink and shrink.
Right.
And so you got to figure out the offensive line.
Yeah, it's just very scary for me because, after seeing this team draft over the last 5 seasons, Nick, I think we've started to realize where they're good and where they're not, right? Obviously, when it comes to linebackers, they're great. When it comes to running backs, they're great. When it comes to even defensive linemen, they're able to find talent, where other people miss that. Offensive line, though, is one of those groupings that
when it comes to rounds 5 through 7, great. And how about Jomador Lenore? That's another one where I just scratched my head because I really do think he played really well the first couple weeks of the season in the preseason. And then it's like he just completely went away. I thought week 2 in that Eagles game, he made a handful of great plays, not even necessarily plays, but just staying stride for stride with Devontae Smith and just doing a very, very sound job. I was very surprised, and I think that's a storyline that doesn't get talked about too much for whatever reason. Like, what happened to him? Because it looked like he got off to such a promising start. I was so promised by what I was seeing on the field that I started saying crazy things like, I'm comfortable with Emmanuel Mosley and Jomador Lenore to close out the rest of the year without Verrett. Lenore's looked so good. And then just like, where did he go?
Right.
What happened?
I mean, I think anytime you're playing rookies, there's going to be the up and down. And obviously he's a 5th round pick. So,
but it's like, I didn't see the down on the field. You know what I mean? Like, where was the down on the field on Sundays where it's like that? Because I thought he showed enough promise to, keep him out there. Like, I saw a lot more downs from Ambry Thomas as far as, like, at least noticeable. And, of course, I wouldn't call myself a casual football fan. I know a little bit more than that. I'll give myself a little bit more respect than that. But I don't watch the film after every game, so I know there's people that are able to form their opinions based on the film and kind of point out the different coverages and what Thomas did better than Lenore. But just as far as the blatantly obvious, here comes another hold or a pass interference on Ambry Thomas, or just him getting mossed or just being in the right position but not being able to make a play on the ball. I saw a lot less of that from Jomador Lenore, granted a smaller sample size, than Ambry Thomas. So I just always thought it was interesting, like, what happened to Lenore?
Right. Yeah, I mean, to be seen. I think that Lenore, they might be grooming to be that nickel corner.
Nickelback.
Yeah. And if that's to be seen, then that'd be great. I mean, we got a lot of time to really see what happens, see what they do in free agencies coming up. Nick, I thought for you dusting off the cobwebs and getting all that. You did fantastic on
Right
this show,
man.
my man. I actually linked I just took it straight off of your Twitter, all of your links, and put it in the description. But why don't you let the guys know that are still here with us listening, what you're going to be most active on, where they could find you, moving on this offseason.
Yeah, definitely. My Twitter's where it's at @NinerNick_22. My Instagram channel, I'm trying to get it going. It's been a while since I posted on the old IG. Same handle though. And then my podcast, The Faithful Fanatic, more content's going to be coming up, more episodes, getting back into the swing of everything, trying to get my routines down, working my 9-to-5 job, which is more of actually like a 7-to-6 job for right now, these long strenuous work days. But I'm excited to, get back into it, talk about the 49ers offseason. It's going to be exciting. The quarterback rumors are never going to go away for whoever knows how long. It's just going to keep going and going. But Sunil, it's been great talk with you, man. I appreciate the invite on. It's always a pleasure. And I appreciate the extravagant introductions as always.
You know it, man. Hey, we got to get you on here again very, very soon. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. I always want to give credit to the comment section. You guys are always holding it down and giving us great content to talk about. Please, if you haven't already, go to Nick's YouTube page, go to his Twitter, go to his, man, he has so much going on over there. Just go to all of his links and subscribe to all that, like all his content. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button or the like button to this video and this channel. Please do that as well. We are being more and more active on this channel with weekly content and trying to give you a little bit of a different angle from what you hear from everybody else. So please, please, please support us. I love that you guys are, the community is growing. It's beautiful to see. And we keep bringing on pretty guys like Nick for everybody here to enjoy as well. And like we always say, have a great night. Keep it safe and always stay hydrated. Have a great night, guys. We'll talk to you guys very, very soon.